first official function, and I couldn't be a better one.
Well, thank you.
I must say, as president of the university, Your Highness, the greatest part of the job is I get to work with the Chancellor. It's been a great pleasure. We're going to miss her
I
enormously.
hope that's been the easiest. The easiest one. Oh.
Absolutely.
Good potential there. Being located in the same city.
School of Government just about to launch.
We'll come over.
Around that.
Vous avez votre mortier.
Tonight, we're playing Pollution this afternoon.
So, moving on to it, I think
They're setting up a
somebody,
brand new campus.
right, somebody, yeah, we're just gonna go. Just a bit.
And that was awful. Working out whether just one place is right.
But, of today, so,
No, we have a large presence in Nairobi.
so,
Go back?
yes.
Okay.
This is perfect.
Yes, His Highness, if you'd like to hold this for now. Very good. For one, great. Excellent. A couple more, that's great. Fantastic. His Highness.
God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Votre Altesse, Madame le Chancelier, Excellences, Monsieur le maire, Monsieur le ministre, Monsieur le député, invités distingués, chers amis, je vous souhaite aujourd'hui la plus cordiale bienvenue à l'Université d'Ottawa pour cette collation des grades assez spéciale. Je suis ravi de vous voir en si grand nombre ici parmi nous aujourd'hui. Votre présence est un hommage à l'individu exceptionnel que nous honorons ce matin. I invited His Highness in earlier conversation to observe how thoughtfully we had organized a typical Canadian January day. His Highness told me that he's a great fan of skiing, but not necessarily on the sidewalks. Son Altesse l'Aga Khan est un véritable rassembleur qui a su jeter des ponts entre les peuples. Un homme qui a contribué de façon exemplaire tant à son groupe confessionnel qu'à l'humanité tout entière. Notre chancelier Huguette Labelle va nous parler en détail de la carrière et de la contribution remarquable de son Altesse l'Aga Khan. Permettez-moi de dire simplement that by his life's work, by his eloquent advocacy, by his inspiring example, His Highness provides a compelling response to those who question whether people of different creeds and cultures can successfully create a society together. Using his own faith as a point of departure, His Highness speaks always directly to the goodness in all people and shows through both his words and his actions that at root, the highest aspirations of all faiths eventually meet, and that there are no divisions among us if our desire truly is to create a better world. In October of 2010, His Highness delivered the 10th annual Baldwin LaFontaine Lecture here in Canada. In his remarks, he explained and he illustrated pluralism as he conceives it, a condition in which differences are neither assimilated nor homogenized, but rather encouraged to coexist and to thrive together. I quote His Highness's words. In that light, the amazing diversity of creation itself can be seen as a great gift to us, not as a cause for anxiety, but as a source for delight. In this spirit of humility and hospitality, the stranger will be welcomed and respected rather than subdued or ignored. Pour nous, ici à l'Université d'Ottawa, l'œuvre de Son Altesse a une signification et une inspiration particulières. Nous avons inclus dans notre déclaration de mission comme institution, service aux autres. Nous avons inauguré il y a quelques mois le Centre d'engagement mondial et communautaire, ici sur le campus. Il existe pour les membres de la communauté universitaire, étudiants, professeurs, membres du personnel, qui cherchent des occasions de faire du bénévolat, que ce soit ici au Canada ou à l'extérieur du pays. Dans une perspective plus large, le Centre est un moyen d'exprimer notre vision d'une collectivité d'entraide que nous souhaitons promouvoir au-delà de notre campus. To the two traditional dimensions of a university, namely learning and discovery, we have, Your Highness, added a third, service to others in accordance with ethical principles. Your Highness, we are very proud that the Aga Khan Foundation of Canada is a community partner in this major undertaking. And we see Your Highness's presence today as a call to action for all in our university community who seek to serve humanity. Now, as some of you may know, Chancellor Labelle's exceptional tenure at the University of Ottawa is coming to a close. It will indeed end in just a few weeks. Au cours des 18 dernières années, elle a présidé plus de 200 cérémonies de collation des grades et conféré des milliers de diplômes à nos finissants et finissantes. Selon moi, l'occasion est tout indiquée pour la remise de son dernier diplôme, un doctorat honorifique à son Altesse. Il serait difficile d'imaginer un docteur d'honneur qui incarne mieux que lui les valeurs de pluralisme, de curiosité intellectuelle et de service auprès de la collectivité auxquelles nous adhérons et qui ont été toujours promus par Huguette Labelle comme chancelier. Alors j'invite maintenant Madame Labelle à prendre la parole. Huguette.
One of the privileges of being Chancellor is the opportunity to recognize individuals who have shown outstanding leadership and an exemplary commitment to service to others. And of course, as the President just said, today is a very special honor for me, a special day, that my last function, my last official function as Chancellor of the University of Ottawa, this great institution, is to confer upon you, Your Highness, an honorary doctorate. Today's honorary doctorate recipient is a man who inspires his followers and commands the respect of heads of states everywhere. As spiritual leader to millions of ethnically and culturally diverse Shia Ismaili Muslims living in over 25 countries, His Highness Prince Karim Aga Khan, the 49th hereditary prince, has dedicated his life to guiding them through the challenges of a rapidly changing world. And in the 55 years, and I'm sure these have gone very fast, Your Highness, in these 55 years since assuming the imamat, His Highness has helped his people meet the demands of a technological age and look for new solutions to problems that can no longer be solved by traditional methods as we have in the past. L'Aga Khan naît à Genève, en Suisse, et passe sa petite enfance au Kenya, à Nairobi. Il obtient un baccalauréat spécialisé en histoire islamique de l'université Harvard, et c'est à l'âge de 20 ans qu'il succède à son grand-père en tant qu'imam. Dès qu'il assume cette responsabilité suprême, le nouvel Aga Khan fait preuve d'une impressionnante sagesse pour son âge. Tout en guidant la réflexion spirituelle de son peuple, il met ses innombrables talents au service du développement éducatif, social et économique de celui-ci. Dans l'un de ses nombreux discours mémorables, l'Aga Khan déclare « La quête de justice et de sécurité, la lutte pour l'égalité des chances, l'appel à la tolérance et à l'harmonie et le droit à la dignité humaine sont des impératifs moraux que nous devons respecter et auxquels nous devons réfléchir quotidiennement. » His work has bettered the lives of people and communities around the world. The Aga Khan Development Network is an umbrella organization of agencies which are mandated to effect positive change in a staggering number of sectors, be it the environment, healthcare, education, microfinance, private sector enterprise, rural development, and the revitalization of historic cities. His Highness has established the International Aga Khan University, with its Faculty of Health Sciences and teaching hospitals based in Karachi, as well as the University of Central Asia and the Aga Khan academic programs, and we are pleased to have the president of that university with us today. He also set up the Aga Khan Rural Support Program in Pakistan and India, and expanded existing Herding hospitals and primary health care centers in Tanzania and Kenya. Le réseau Aga Khan de développement regroupe la Fondation Aga Khan, le Fonds de développement économique et le Trust pour la culture, qui coordonne le programme pour l'architecture islamique à l'Université Harvard et au Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Aussi, le prix Aga Khan d'architecture et le programme en faveur des villes historiques. Le réseau comprend aussi des services de santé et d'éducation qui ont contribué à l'amélioration de la vie de centaines de milliers de personnes en Asie du Sud et en Afrique de l'Est. En Afghanistan seulement, le réseau Aga Khan a investi plus de 750 millions de dollars dans des projets de développement. Mais le plus impressionnant est sans aucun doute la participation active, Son Altesse, dans l'ensemble de ses fonctions. En effet, il s'investit cœur et âme dans la réalisation de ces initiatives. In our country, Aga Khan Foundation Canada, as a member of the foundation, has been raising awareness and funding programs to fight global poverty for over 3 decades. His Highness has expressed his admiration for Canada's values, describing pluralism as no longer simply an asset or a prerequisite for progress and development, but it is vital to our existence, he said. To that end, he established, in partnership with the Canadian government, the Global Centre for Pluralism, based in Ottawa. The centre will be a repository of research and knowledge about fostering pluralistic values, policies, and practices. Its governance and its education and outreach are founded on the premise that tolerance and understanding towards the cultures, the values, and faiths of other peoples is essential to the survival of an interdependent world. En 2013, le Canada bénéficiera aussi de la générosité exceptionnelle de Son Altesse alors que le musée Aga Khan de Toronto ouvrira ses portes. Cet établissement conservera et exposera plus d'1 millier d'artefacts en témoignage de l'héritage intellectuel et culturel de la diversité des communautés linguistiques. Et je dois vous dire que, en parlant du secteur de santé, entre autres, j'ai eu la chance de voir directement le travail de l'Aga Khan à l'Université de Karachi, à la faculté de médecine, où l'approche qui a été établie à ce moment-là n'était pas d'envoyer les médecins déjà préparés à travers le monde pour aller se spécialiser, quand la plupart du temps, ils ne revenaient pas, mais plutôt d'amener l'expertise du monde entier à développer les spécialistes médicaux dans ces pays. Et le Canada, l'Université d'Ottawa ont contribué à cette œuvre et continuent de le faire aujourd'hui. Mais c'est un modèle, je pense que toutes les universités, et surtout dans les pays en développement, pourraient vraiment bénéficier de l'apprendre. Depuis plus de 50 ans, les Ismaélis du monde entier honorent l'Aga Khan pour son rôle de guide spirituel et un nombre incalculable d'autres personnes ont profité de ses combats passionnés en leur nom. Aujourd'hui, à l'Université d'Ottawa, un établissement qui encourage ses étudiants à adopter une culture d'entraide, nous sommes particulièrement heureux de rendre honneur à un visionnaire et un philanthrope qui incarne un idéal d'engagement mondial et communautaire. It is for these reasons that in the name of the Senate of the University of Ottawa, I present to you today's recipient of the degree of Doctor of the University, His Highness the Aga Khan. As Chancellor of the University of Ottawa, by authority of the powers vested in me, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of the University, with such title, honors, and privileges that are proper to it. À titre de chancelier de l'Université d'Ottawa, en vertu des pouvoirs qui me sont délégués, je vous confère le grade de Docteur de l'Université, avec le titre, honneur et privilèges y associés.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Chancellor Bell, President Rock, Excellencies, distinguished guests, permettez-moi d'exprimer, avant toute chose, ma profonde reconnaissance pour l'insigne honneur que vous me faites. Je suis également heureux de partager ce moment avec toutes les personnalités conviées aujourd'hui, car vous êtes tous des amis de longue date ou de nouveaux amis. Je voudrais aussi dire toute ma gratitude pour l'excellence de la coopération dont le réseau Aga Khan pour le développement a bénéficié de la part des membres de votre université, de votre ville et de votre pays. Un exemple tout à fait récent, bien sûr, est le nouveau Centre mondial du pluralisme, notre projet commun avec le gouvernement du Canada, projet qui est aujourd'hui devenu une réalité ici à Ottawa. Je me dois de souligner que votre chancelière Huguette Labelle est membre du conseil de ce centre, ce qui ne représente que l'une des nombreuses manières dont elle a contribué personnellement aux projets dans lesquels je me suis moi-même profondément impliqué, sans compter les innombrables services qu'elle a rendus au Canada et au monde. Je suis profondément heureux de lui adresser aujourd'hui une salutation toute particulière. Au moment où ses autres fonctions au sein de l'Université d'Ottawa, 18 années en qualité de chancelière, arrivent à leur terme. L'esprit de coopération que j'ai évoqué sur les plans personnels et institutionnels est bien entendu le reflet des préoccupations que nous partageons à propos des défis auxquels notre monde est maintenant confronté. J'ai été heureux à cet égard de constater que l'Université d'Ottawa a focalisé son attention sur nombre de ces défis dans son nouveau plan stratégique Destination 2020. Votre engagement en faveur du bilinguisme, à titre d'exemple, est le miroir de notre propre volonté de faire progresser l'esprit du pluralisme. de notre conviction que l'affirmation d'une identité culturelle n'est en rien contradictoire avec l'idée de promouvoir la coopération interculturelle. De fait, les deux mouvements s'épaulent mutuellement. J'ai aussi à l'esprit la façon impressionnante dont vous avez porté votre intérêt sur un large éventail des sciences de la santé, des sciences moléculaires et des technologies de la communication, intérêt que notre réseau partage. There are many topics of mutual interest that I could talk about today, but I have picked just one. In my eyes, it is important, and I understand that it is also high among your priorities. I refer to the field of governance and public policy, and specifically to the difficulty of establishing workable constitutional systems, especially in countries with less experience in democratic governance. As you know, my own interests in the last 50 years as Imam of the Ismaili community have been primarily focused on Africa, South Asia, Central Asia, and the Middle East, and on improving the quality of life for the people who live there. The more I think about this matter, the more I'm persuaded that one of the critical barriers to progress is the way in which governing processes occur. The University of Ottawa has a long tradition of sharing internationally in the hard work of intellectual inquiry. Canada's Governor-General recently referred to this process as the diplomacy of knowledge. And it seems to me that questions of constitutional governance in the developing world deserve a particularly high place on that agenda. The so-called Arab Spring has brought special attention to this challenge, illustrating that it is easier to rally people in opposition to a particular government than to forge agreement about new governing processes. But while this pattern has recently been more dramatically evident, it has been a reality for a very, very long time. In my life, the two moments which contributed most dramatically to this condition were the fall of the British and French colonial empires after World War II, and then the disintegration of the Soviet Union and its Eastern European empire 2 decades ago. The process continues today as developing nations re-examine, sometimes peacefully, sometimes violently, the structures under which they are governed. In some cases, and I think here of Kenya's very new constitution, power has been diffused in response, no doubt, to pressures from ethnic, economic, religious, and other centrifugal forces. One risk of decentralization is that it can place more decision-making power into the hands of communities that have had less access to education and governing experience and less exposure to national and global issues. Perhaps this is why, in some cases, the trend has been to consolidate governing authority, such as in Afghanistan, with the aim of overcoming inertia and inefficiency, as well as fragmented and provincial outlooks. The history of constitutions can be seen as an oscillation between the two poles of centralization and diffusion, with new concentrations of power often amplifying the temptation to abuse, while new dispersions of power are often associated with stagnation, paralysis, and even more opportunities for corruption. Arrangements that effectively balance power through a federalist approach, for example, are elusive. What is critical is that constitutional arrangements should respect inherited traditions, ensure fairness to minority communities, respond to rural as well as urban concerns, and underwrite equitable opportunity for a better life. Reconciling the global and the local, the urban and the rural, the regional and the national, is a formidable challenge, one that calls for the best of our intellectual energies and consistent fine-tuning over time. There is a second question related to the experience of fledgling and often failing democracies. In much of the developed world, we have seen the emergence over time of two-pronged political structures. I mean the developed world, where one party forms a government and the other constitutes the opposition. This arrangement can foster greater accountability and even a certain stability. But I have to say I am increasingly skeptical about the emergence of such constructs in many developing countries. To the contrary, I suspect that a continuing multiplicity of widely differentiated parties will mean that some form of coalition government will become the norm. This will especially be the case, of course, in societies that are multicultural, multi-religious, or struggling to accommodate secular and religious political forces. The difficulty is, however, that multi-party coalitions can be intrinsically undisciplined, with their differing agendas and often unstable. In such situations, the threat of defection can be highly destabilizing, while accountability is often blurred and transparency is discouraged. Yet coalition governance is now becoming a familiar form of government in many countries of Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. The broader the array of parties, the greater the risk that they will be based on personalities or narrow parochial identities, rather than a broadly recognized, predictable point of view. There is certainly no straightforward, universal formula to apply in such situations. We must not naively assume that what has worked in some parts of the Western world, for example, will also work the same way in less developed contexts. Different places, different histories require quite different approaches. The questions raised by coalition governance are not easy ones, either in the developing world or in the developed world. What should be the rules under which parties and other governing entities are put together? How can we best find the glue that will hold them together, such as joint commitments to issues of clear national interest, and to a spirit of pluralism which values conciliation among diversified viewpoints? Let me emphasize that I am not opposed to the concept of coalition government. Indeed, it may be an inevitable response to the intrinsic pluralism of many of the countries in which I work. But the high level of political instability and failure around the world illustrates the need for creative new thinking about this particularly demanding form of democracy. What constitutional options and best practices will give coalition government the greatest chance of stability and consistent high-quality performance? The alternative is a world widely characterized by significant numbers of unstable states. It is a scenario to be avoided. Again, the discussion of comparative political systems is just one of many conversations in which the great universities of the world should be vital participants. Our own Khan University is now planning a new graduate school of government, public policy, and civil society to help address these issues. And surely this is a discussion in which the University of Ottawa can make a special contribution, given the commitment you have articulated to research, to the topic of Canada and the world, your focus on international intellectual engagement, including 140 bilateral university agreements, your emphasis on fostering democracy, and indeed the creation of a new premier center for governance and public policy research. I know too that this university's global effectiveness is reinforced by the high regard in which Canada is held as a valued international partner. In my experience, a country's standing in our contemporary world is no longer recognized by what it can achieve for itself, but by what it can do for others. In this context, Canada has truly become a great world power. Thank you.
Votre Altesse, au nom de l'université, je vous remercie pour vos mots éloquents et inspirants. It was indeed a very great privilege to receive you today on campus and to hear you speak this morning. In the course of your remarks, you've stimulated creative thought about constitutional governance, particularly in the context of coalition governments. Your prediction that they will become much more the norm in the future in developing countries rings very true. And you have helpfully observed that this university, with others, might constructively contribute to the analysis of public policy that is called for. May I say that on behalf of the university, I enthusiastically welcome your suggestion that we deepen the existing collaboration with your own university in this, as in so many other fields. I might point out, Your Highness, that we have a great number of connections and collaborations with the Aga Khan University, of which we are enormously proud. And I'm just delighted that we have with us here on the stage today the president of the Aga Khan University International, Feroz Rasool. Thank you for coming, President Rasool. Along with the vice presidents who are here as well, I shall bring your message back to the deans and to the academy. Nous avons l'intention de poursuivre les idées que vous avez contribuées aujourd'hui au cours de votre présentation. Et je vous remercie encore pour vos mots et vos pensées importantes. Maintenant, mesdames et messieurs, je vous invite à vous lever et à rester debout à vos places pendant que le cortège quitte la salle. I ask you to stand and remain standing in your places as the official party leaves the room. But just before you stand, let me remind you, je voudrais vous rappeler qu'il y a une réception au 12e étage, immédiatement après, auquel vous êtes très bienvenus. Alors, s'il vous plaît, vous joignez à nous. 12th floor reception. Right after this ceremony concludes, we hope you'll join us. It will be delightful to have the opportunity to exchange with you less formally upstairs. Alors, please stand and remain standing as the official party leaves the room. S'il vous plaît, merci.